What is dark psychology? Defining dark psychology, scope and relation to traditional psychology. Dark psychology is a popular term, not a formal academic field, describing the study and use of psychological principles to manipulate, influence, or control others, often unethically and for personal gain. It focuses on the darker aspects of human behavior, examining how knowledge of cognition, emotion, and social dynamics can be weaponized. Its scope is narrow, centered on tactics like manipulation, coercion, and deception used exploitatively. This contrasts with traditional psychology, which studies the full spectrum of human behavior and mental processes, often aiming for well-being and understanding. While traditional psychology researches manipulation and personality disorders, it does so within a broader context. Dark psychology isolates these negative applications, focusing on the intent to harm or exploit. The darkness lies in the unethical deployment of psychological principles, not the principles themselves. Its roots touch on historical philosophy, Machiavelli, and foundational psychology, Freud's unconscious, Jung's shadow self. But the term itself gained popularity more recently. Core concepts: the dark triad. Central to dark psychology is the dark triad: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. These are typically studied at a subclinical level, representing personality variations in the general population, not necessarily full clinical disorders. Subclinical narcissism involves grandiosity, entitlement, a need for admiration, and often low empathy, exploiting others to maintain an inflated self-image. They can react defensively to criticism. Machiavellianism describes strategic, cynical manipulators who prioritize self-interest, using deceit and cunning in a calculated, emotionally detached way to achieve goals. Subclinical psychopathy is marked by low empathy, callousness, impulsivity, thrill-seeking, and antisocial behavior. They may use superficial charm, but engage in deceit and manipulation with little remorse. These three traits overlap significantly, sharing the dark core of callousness, manipulativeness, and egocentrism. However, distinctions exist. Narcissism is driven by ego reinforcement and admiration, Machiavellianism by strategic gain, and psychopathy by impulsivity, lack of remorse, and immediate gratification. The Manipulator's Toolkit: common tactics and techniques. Dark psychology employs various tactics for influence and control, often subtle and deceptive. Gaslighting undermines a victim's reality, causing self-doubt. Love bombing uses excessive initial affection to create dependency. Guilt tripping exploits empathy to coerce compliance. The silent treatment uses withdrawal as punishment. Triangulation involves a third party to create instability. Deception includes lying, omitting truths, paltering, or fraud. Dark persuasion unethically leverages psychological principles like scarcity, creating urgency, social proof, using popularity, reciprocity, creating obligation, and authority, appealing to expertise. Emotional manipulation targets feelings like fear or insecurity, using tactics like negging, backhanded compliments, or playing the victim. Other methods include backstabbing, exploitation of vulnerabilities, and even brainwashing. These tactics exploit basic human needs and biases for validation, connection, and trust. Arenas of influence, where dark psychology manifests. Dark psychology tactics appear across various domains, adapting to each context. Interpersonal relationships. Tactics like gaslighting, love bombing, and guilt tripping are used to control partners, foster dependency, or exploit resources, causing significant emotional damage. Workplace dynamics. Ambition can fuel manipulation, backstabbing, rumor spreading, or toxic leadership using coercion and control. Dark triad traits are linked to workplace bullying and negative organizational outcomes. Marketing and advertising. Techniques like scarcity, social proof, and emotional appeals are common. While standard practice, a line exists between ethical persuasion and unethical manipulation that deceives or exploits consumer vulnerabilities. Political strategies, manipulation, fear-mongering, disinformation, and appeals to emotion are used for political influence. Other contexts include cults using isolation and indoctrination. The prevalence across domains highlights the persistent potential for manipulation. The ethical tightrope, morality and consequences. Using psychological knowledge to manipulate or harm is widely considered unethical. While understanding these tactics aids self-defense, the knowledge itself can be misused. The impact on victims is severe, causing anxiety, depression, trauma, confusion, self-doubt, and eroded self-worth. Gaslighting, in particular, is a form of psychological abuse that can lead to long-term trauma, PTSD, and difficulty trusting oneself or others. Beyond individuals, these tactics create toxic environments in workplaces and relationships, damage consumer trust, and contribute to broader societal harm linked to antisocial behavior. Contextualizing the darkness. Comparison with other psychological fields. Comparing dark psychology to other fields clarifies its focus. Contrast with positive psychology. Positive psychology studies human flourishing, strengths, and well-being, aiming for constructive outcomes. Dark psychology focuses on harm and manipulation. Dark triad traits like Machiavellianism and psychopathy generally correlate negatively with well-being, contrasting with positive psychology's goals. Narcissism shows a more complex, sometimes superficially positive, relationship with certain well-being aspects. Distinction from clinical psychology. Clinical psychology diagnoses and treats formal mental health disorders, like NPD and ASPD. Dark psychology often focuses on subclinical traits, variations in the general population below the diagnostic threshold, while related dark psychology emphasizes understanding influence tactics and social interaction patterns rather than formal diagnosis and therapy. Synthesis. Understanding the landscape of dark psychology. Dark psychology informally describes the study of manipulative and exploitative human behavior. It highlights how psychological principles can be used for harm, often driven by dark triad traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy. Tactics like gaslighting, love bombing, and dark persuasion manifest in relationships, workplaces, and marketing, causing significant ethical concerns and psychological damage to victims. Popular interest reflects a desire for awareness as self-defense against manipulation. Understanding dark psychology means recognizing the human capacity for malevolence, identifying manipulative tactics, and differentiating ethical influence from harmful exploitation. The goal is not to master manipulation, but to foster critical awareness for promoting respect and psychological safety.